North to South Africa, East to West Africa, TOS TV Network is your digital-first Pan-African news network, bringing you news from across the continent. Visit our website www.tostvnetwork.com and follow us on social media at TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
The event began with addresses by the keynote speakers, as well as others who emphasized the importance of the symposium, especially at a time when the nation is experiencing a history-defining moment. This was then followed by panel discussions comprising of panelists drawn from different sectors across Nigeria.
What are the top 3 things that must be changed in this current constitution?
If you look at the preamble of the constitution, it talks about principles of freedom, equality, and justice. However, what we've seen over time is we're yet to have a constitution that truly ensures that these principles are a reality in the country. So as a young woman, if you ask me what priority issues are with respect to the Constitution, I would first say that it's time we have a Constitution that guarantees gender inclusion, especially as it relates to the rights of women as citizens in the country, representation and inclusion of women in government at both the executive, legislative, federal, and state, and also the conversations around the role of women within political parties. So when you talk gender, that is it. And under that is the right of the girl child. The second issue, I believe, is the issue of local governance. And that is because over a period of time, we have seen a system that has robbed the people at the local level of democratic governance. So we do not have a local government system that is independent and autonomous, and that truly has a citizens' engagement structure. So the second for me is strengthening local government administration and ensuring the independence of the local government in Nigeria. If we can achieve this in the Constitution, and I believe that that is one way to give the people a people's constitution. And then the third for me, it's broadly, I would frame this, because you said 3. I'd frame this one, inclusion and rights. And inclusion from the angle of youth inclusion, how the Constitution guarantees the rights of young people. And this is within the, going on the background that Nigeria's population is a young population. But you see, recently, a report is a Youth Development Index report that was released. 181 countries were ranked, and Nigeria were 161 out of the 181 countries ranked, meaning that this is one of the countries where young people struggle to survive, a country that is largely driven by the youth population. So youth inclusion in one handle, and a part on rights, expanding our social economic rights. And because we can no longer build a system where citizens' right to economic development and empowerment, right to basic standard of living is not guaranteed. And then the part on the right to the child, the right to education. And I'm glad when the governor mentioned the fact that we're not talking about the young boys who have to herd cattle as early as 10 years old. So for me, the conversation when it comes to rights is the need to in the chapter 4, the conversation around fundamental rights, we need to clearly state the rights of a child. Because while we may have had the Child's Rights Act passed, we know that so many states are yet to domesticate it at the state level. So let us have the provision of the rights of child as a fundamental human right in our Constitution. Basic rights to education, right to parental care, right to freedom from exploitative labor. Just think about that. We need that as a fundamental right. And then the basic right to economic empowerment generally. And then the youth part, when it comes to inclusion in government, we need to start seeing a government that truly reflects what the society looks like.
In terms of our constitution, I believe indeed it's time for us to have a people constitution, a constitution that defines the people as the center stage of what that constitution should look like. But in terms of 3 areas I will look at very critically is, number one, my colleague talked about the fundamental human rights. Right to fair hearing, right to people to, be able to express themselves without fear of, being caged or being arrested or any of those things. Allow people to express themselves. We've in the past years, we've frowned so much on people expressing themselves and generally just talking about their issues and constructive criticism. People in leadership, always feel like anybody criticizing them hates them or any of those things. We need to look past that and have constructive criticism accepted and used to deliver dividends to democracy. Because at the end of the day, you're there for a particular period of time to move our country from where you've met it to where it ought to go. So accepting that and allowing that to flourish effectively is very important and should be enshrined in our constitution very effectively. Local government autonomy, because I have run for a local government position before as chairman, I am very big on that, allowing the local governments to be able to, because the local government, as I've said in various fora, is the first government that interacts with the people. If that government is not, if that government is not properly, allowed to carry out its activities, the people cannot feel the government. So that's why people will always be looking at the federal government, the federal government, the federal government. But the local government is the critical, is the government that you're supposed to be able to walk in and walk out. And that government needs to be enshrined effectively and removed from the powers of the governors and the state assembly. The third thing I'll talk about is education, qualification, and capacity for those who rule us. You see, you can't give what you don't have, and we want leaders who will, who have capacity to be able to lead us. Education is key, and as it is today in our constitution, having a school start or primary 6 is completely abysmal and we should throw that section completely away and it should be redefined. So having leaders who have capacity, who are educated, people who know that they are there to serve, people who have proven track records are the types of people that we want to see lead us.
First thing that we need to change about our constitution is that there's too much of a reliance placed on sharing resources, positions, political appointments, and so on and so forth. There's not enough emphasis placed on producing those resources or being productive generally. Nigeria was not constructed as a geopolitical entity to produce anything. We were constructed as a geopolitical entity to share. That's the reason why we have so many problems. The reason why ethnicity, tribe, religion, state of origin, and all those other things have such an important role in our lives as Nigerians is because we use them to forward our arguments as to why our sector of the people, our section of the country, our people versus their people should have better access to scarce resources. We focus more on sharing, not producing. With due respect to the former AGF while he was delivering his speech, I counted him use the word share at least 10 times in that speech while he was here, possibly more. He never once used the word produce. Never once. As a people, we place too much emphasis on sharing even things that we don't produce. That's the first thing I'll try to change in our constitution. There's too much emphasis placed on a federal character. Where are you from? What God do you worship? As opposed to what must be important, the content of that character. What can you bring to the table? That's the first thing we need to change about our constitution. Second thing I would like to change. The second thing I would like to change is our legislature. We have three arms of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. But to my mind, the legislature is the most important part of that focus, of that setup. The executive will only execute the laws that the legislature passes. The judiciary will only interpret the laws that the legislature passes. The legislature is at the fundamental foundation of everything that we do as a nation. And it is perhaps one of the places where we don't pay enough attention to. By a show of hands, how many people here really question, have watched a legislative debate? By a show of hands. Elections in Nigeria, legislative debate. It simply doesn't happen. It doesn't happen on an important enough scale, on a large enough scale. What we do is that we place too much focus on the executive, and on election day, that's the reason why politicians will tell you, respectfully, PDP up to down. What they mean is that vote for the executive PDP and then vote for the legislative PDP. We don't necessarily question who the people who go to our legislative houses are. That's the reason why when they get there, we're shocked by the beliefs that they profess. We don't really interrogate them. And third, most important, well, also equally important to me, is justice sector reforms. I'll give you a statistic that shocks me. In our prisons and correctional facilities in this country, at least 70% of the detainees in our prisons are awaiting trial. At least 70%. There are about 72,000 people who are detained in Nigerian correctional facilities nationwide. At least 52,000 of those people have never had a judge sit on the merits of their matter. And they've been there 1 year, 2 years, 12 years. A lot of them are going to die there. That is perhaps one of the biggest set of injustices in this country, that a policeman can pick you up, lock you up, and forget you when you didn't do anything wrong. We have people who are routinely arrested for jaywalking and are forgotten in the system. We have what the NSAS protest showed us is how easy it is for people to take you, lock you up, construct an entirely false narrative about you and forget you in the justice system. We have a government that is repeatedly telling us that they are reintegrating repented Boko Haram members into our societies. And yet, people are still locked up in correctional facilities across the country because they stood up to demand for their rights. We have essentially a justice sector, and when I say justice sector, I include the police in that, because the police ought to be a part of our justice sector. We have a justice sector where the president appoints the IG. Now, the Constitution says that the governor of a state doesn't have a control over the commissioner of police. So, the commissioner of police reports to the IG. The president appoints the IG. How are you going to have free and fair elections? How? When the president is able to decapitate the security agencies to appoint his preferred person. So you have somebody who's going to be appointed as IG, as chief of army staff, as chief of naval staff, and then 20 senior officers are being retired so that that one person can be appointed, what do you think is going to happen?
Okay.
His loyalties don't lie to the Constitution. His loyalties lie to that president.
So first of all, I ask this question: what is Nigeria's motto? Unity, faith, peace, and progress. The Constitution that we are working with, has it promoted any of this? Does it guarantee any of this? Are we really united? Are we really united, or we are just claiming to be united? Because I know in Nigeria, we identify people first with their names and with their tribe. We are just Igbo people, Hausa people, Yoruba people, Fulani people, Efik people, staying in the same space, calling ourselves Nigerians. Are we really united? What faith? The citizens, do they even have faith in the country? When every young man in Nigeria, his hope now is how to get out of the country. When someone puts up a picture taken in Canada and US, what you see young people write is, God, when? When will I ever get to leave this country? That's the hope of every. So we're supposed to be in the United States of America for a program this year. The least date we got for visa interview appointment is 2022 November. That tells you the brain drain, the level of young people that are leaving the country. So what are the issues here? There are issues that needs to be addressed. The Constitution in itself, do we keep talking about the sections that need to be fixed when the Constitution in itself is bad? So most of us drive cars. Your car engine is terribly bad. Do you keep fixing? It most times would never work. At the end of the day, you just have to probably change your engine and get a new engine. That's the only way it can work. Is disappointing to me, but not that surprising that since the past 22 years of this democracy, that we are still working with this same constitution that is faulty, that is sick, that is bad. But I understand why. Because the people who were expecting to work on the constitution or to change the constitution are the beneficiaries of the constitution. And that brings me to my first point. So we hear our governors, we hear our public office holders in public outings like this, they speak, but we all know that the most of the corruption happens at the executive level, at the tables of the governors of most states. Then you wonder, how is it that in our prisons we don't have any governor sitting in the prison now who has been jailed for corruption? And meanwhile, corruption is the biggest issue and biggest challenge that affects every single Nigerian, young, old, even my kids that are still small. It's already affecting them. Why not? So what are we doing exactly to fix these issues? First of all, I come to the part of our constitution that speaks on the criminal finance laws. Is the criminal finance laws as our constitution stipulates is so weak, with so much loopholes, so much gaps, which is why you see AFCC will always do the show of we just arrested, we just invited, and at the end of the day, they never get any conviction. We don't have any person back in the prisons. Any political actor or the public office holders, they find technical ways to get away with. So for us to make progress, to have a constitution that should tackle corruption. So Nigeria to date still practices death sentences. You know, you're a lawyer, I think so. Yes, Nigeria still practices death sentences till now. So someone commits murder and is sentenced to death. But there are governors, there are public office holders who are stealing so much resources meant for public institutions, public health institutions, hospitals, schools, that are creating so much poverty and so much debt in numbers. And they are walking around the streets free. In Abuja, living in the biggest houses and driving the fanciest cars in Abuja. So our criminal finance laws needs to be totally overhauled to fit into the kind of laws we have in some of the Asian countries, in Singapore, where we see death penalties for political office holders, and sometimes even their relatives. We have to get to that point so the little resources that we have as a nation. And I always say this, we always assume that Nigeria, we are rich. I don't think we are rich. Nigeria is a poor country. We are boasting about our oil. Every day you go on Twitter, you will see all the car producers, Mercedes-Benz, all the car producers, Toyota, they are already advertising the electric cars. And we are here celebrating our oil that in the next 10 years will be of no value to us. So that's one. What's the second issue? Security is another thing that affects most Nigerians. Even the people who are the political elites. Because of security, some of them are leaving the country, taking their families away. People who are in public office, or people that are rich are also leaving because of security issues. Now, I'm from Imo State, in my state. I know that the DPO of the police station in my local government, I think it's from Plateau State. The DPO can't speak Igbo. The DPO doesn't understand the terrain. The DPO doesn't understand the security challenges. Why do we still have a constitution that expects that before an issue, like Imo said, we had issues of unknown gunmen and the insecurity around the separatist groups. Why do we expect that the IG who is in Abuja will be the one to be able to provide solutions to tackle security issues that are local? So state police, they've been talking around and dancing around the whole issues, but then the politics of where the governors control the police, all of these things needs to be taken care of. We need to start having state police. Because most times I believe, I'm a sociologist, most security challenges are local. Even the solutions to them are also local. So you can't expect someone from Zamfara State comes to Imo State to solve a police. What's an interest in my local government? His wife, he doesn't live in my local government. His children are not attending schools in my local government. But if the DPO or the head of the local police is from the local government, who has a wife who goes to the same market and attends women groups in the local government, who has children who attend schools in the local government, you can't send your boys on the road. They can't do extrajudicial killing when you come back to the meeting of Homunna. You won't do that. Because your people will hold you accountable. So security, police, our criminal finance laws. Then the third part of the constitution, which is why I think all the efforts that has been made to try to, the 2005, the former president Obasanjo tried to create a committee, the National Political Reform Committee, which some billions were spent to see if they can work around the constitution. 2014, I understand the former president Goodluck Jonathan spent about 7 billion plus to see for the national confab to see if they can. But at the end of the day, all of these conferences and committees achieve no result. And I think one of the reasons is, in the constitution in itself, there is no room for referendum. So at the end of the day, there has been arguments that all these committees doesn't have any legal backing to. So you do committees, and you take it back to the same National Assembly. You're saying National Assembly to cut down on government expenses. The same National Assembly that is putting pressure on INEC, expecting that there should be constituency delineation to create more constituencies and have more political actors, have more senators, have more House of members. The same National Assembly that technically turned down all the efforts around having electronic transmission of results in our elections. So when you do all of these things and there is no law that gives power to all of these committees, it still won't work. So I believe the president could lobby the National Assembly and probably send in an executive bill that will have the National Assembly create some sort of referendum in the Constitution. So when these committees are created, the law will give powers to whatever reports that they are, or resolutions that they create, to make it law, to probably overhaul this thing we call a constitution.
That's it for today's episode. Do follow us on social media at TOS TV Network, at Osasu Show, at The Osasu Show on Instagram, Facebook, and other social media handles. To be a part of the Osasu Show Foundation through volunteering or donating, you can find all the details on the screen. Stay up to date on our website to read the communique from the 5th edition of the Osasu Show Symposium. That's www.tostvnetwork.com. On there, you could also find news and sustainable development and current affairs across Africa. All right, next week and throughout the entire 4 weeks, actually, you'll be hearing and watching in-depth analysis and coverage of the symposium and the gala on this show. So don't miss it. You want to stay tuned to watch the entire series. All right. COVID-19 is still out there. Keep washing your hands, keep wearing your face mask, and keep practicing social distancing. God bless you all. See you next week.